And so, yeah, thank you, Colin, so much for your time. And it's a
You're
pleasure to
welcome.
meet you.
Yes.
And yeah, saw the movie today. I'm very excited to talk to you. And yeah, first of all, I want to give you the chance to tell the audience what's about that movie, about that crazy, mystic, dreamy, exciting, a little bit depressing, but also hopeful movie.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a film that's, it is a lot of things, right? It has some like sci-fi elements and there's some dreamy qualities and there's a lot of kind of like surreal things going on, but really at its core, it's a love story. It really is. And between these two people and, there are some twists and turns along the way. But the story is really sort of at its root inspired by my grandparents who met when they were 16 and worked together their entire lives really until they passed away only a few years ago, really. So the film was kind of, as I was writing it, it was sort of like as they were um, essentially on their deathbed dying. And so I was kind of writing it along with that. And it became something much bigger. It just sort of took over and it kind of like the screenplay just sort of like went where it needed to go. And it was very organic in that way. But it was an incredible process with amazing collaborators. And the whole way through it was a real joy. So
Yeah, so thank you so much for your honesty and to know that precious information because I think I would have watched the movie totally different,
sure.
knowing I did something because it's very interesting. So when I watched the main character, I really felt this has maybe something to do with you because how he's observing the world with such different eyes. And there's always, in the beginning, and spoiler, and in the end always open your eyes.
Yeah.
And I think you as a very creative person, as a director, as a script writer, and so much more, I think you go differently through a daily base than maybe someone else. And so
Yeah.
it's everything is so connected. So
I know what you mean. I think you're right. Like it is, while it is inspired maybe by my grandparents' lives, it's very much me. I mean, I filled in all the gaps with my own, interests and proclivities. Like it was very, in that way, like it's totally me, but it's like watching them through my eyes in some regard. And so, yeah, I mean, it was in some ways cathartic, but also kind of about dreams and like the dreams that you have for yourself in the future and how that comes true or maybe doesn't, and you have to kind of pivot and so I think it is a lot about that. And I think as I was writing the film, I was, just I actually started writing the screenplay in 2015. And that was
mhm.
during my graduate school program. It wasn't for a class or anything, but it was during my graduate program in film. And so I think I was also transitioning in my life from,
Yeah.
I was more into the fine arts, like painting and sculpture, and then I went more towards film. And so I think that transition, you can kind of see it in the movie itself, where there's this character who's kind of struggling with what they want to do with their future and what they've done in their past. So yeah, it's all kind of connected. Yeah.
I mean, there must be a pre-movie about the movie to know. It's so interesting. It's really so inspiring.
Well,
And
thanks.
yeah, really, it's that's why I love doing these interviews because the movie is the end product, but what is behind is sometimes it's even, it's also so interesting and so fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's a very process-oriented film, and I think
Yeah.
that's the way I approach filmmaking in general, is from a kind of, fine arts headspace. Like I still paint to this day and I do a lot of drawing, and I think I love that idea of like working things out and like it's sort of like and even in my next movies that I've been writing, like it's all kind of the same. It's like the same process, and just every once in a while I have to kind of wrap it up and put a bow on it and like export it as a movie. And but otherwise it's just the same process kind of throughout. and I don't know, it's kind of relieving in that way where I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll just hop on this train and just go along this way, and then every once in a while, like present it. And so it is kind of an exploration in that way. And I think even the movie like has that kind of it gets into the sciences and about exploration and invention and so forth. And but I think that applies, to the arts in just the same way. So yeah, it's me at its core as well, for sure.
It's so beautiful because I think when you're an artist, you're just an artist. It's not just that you're an actor, you're a director, or you're a painter. I
Right.
mean, a lot of people they don't just get this. I mean, when you work with numbers, you also not you have the whole
Yeah.
range, you know. So
Yeah.
why it's not allowed for us as artists to say, okay, I'm an actress, but I also paint. Is that okay for society?
Right. Right.
So I think it's really serving when you tell the story behind, and also, hey, or this picture really gave me that inspiration for that movie scene or so. And what I really appreciated about the movie were the characters.
Mm,
So I mean, you were not just directing it, you also wrote the script. And I think I could really see that, and I really appreciated that because it was a whole thing. It was everything was so lovely going hand in hand. It was so smooth. And I really liked this yeah, this tragic comedy and
yeah.
this special sense of humor. It has such a I really love and sorry, I'm talking so much, but I
No,
really love
no.
because it was really triggering me. It really hit me this very curiosity, intelligent humor what you gave your
Mm,
characters.
mm,
And because it really has a certain taste. How do you
mm.
write your characters? So how do you I mean, it's so different. I mean, also the
Right.
whole movie, it's just was refreshing. I mean, watch a lot of movies and everything, but it has this, of course, it's an American dream and everything is possible. But where do you get this special taste? Maybe this is coming from your all of your very wide in your creativity, or that is the big question.
Yeah, yeah, no, it could be. I wish I had like a really easy answer for that, but it's a complicated question, and I think it's a complicated answer because in some ways, I like the movie, I remember often with my collaborators, like coming back around to this idea of like the movie is set in all these kind of different time periods. Like it's very odd in the way that it's set up in that it's like wait, what time period is this? Like it's
Yeah.
very like there's like new cars, but there's also like Game Boys and like
This
the
I
yeah.
wanted to ask you, was the first thing I thought, where did they go? I mean, this was the Game Boy I had, the
Yeah.
green, the big one, the one that was so comfy to hold. That was so cool. I mean, I saw it and
Yeah.
I said, I love this movie. No, however it's gonna end. Really, really.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, I mean, I know what you mean. I think like there is that aspect. I mean, and I think we're of the same generation. Like that was the Game Boy that I had. And like so I definitely yeah, grabbed onto a lot of that stuff from my own childhood. But I remember
Yeah,
when we were working with the crew, it was very much, it came back around to like, this movie is not set in a time, it is set in a tone. And I think that tone was really delicate. And I think that's what you're referring to. Like, it had its sort of comedic moments, but also its sort of emotional weight to it as well. And so I think like all of that combined, um, added up into this thing that I didn't really know what to expect either. I mean, yes, I had something in mind, but as you start to make these movies, you're collaborating with so many amazing people, and the actors too coming in with all their own ideas, like Jim Gaffigan, the lead role is a comedian. Like he's a stand-up comedian in the United States, like a big stand-up comedian. And so his approach, like he is just a funny guy in general, but obviously the role
yeah.
itself is much more humdrum than that. But he was able to when the moments really needed it, he was able to add that comedy in such a great way. So I owe a lot to him and the whole acting team for sure.
I really appreciate this taste of comedy. And this is
Hmm.
Germany has such a different taste of comedy, what I also really appreciate. It's
Okay,
also
yeah, sure.
more this risky comedy. It's this curiosity, and it is not a plain and simple humor. It's something that is more complex. It gives a very beautiful deepness to the character, and this is
Mm,
something. It's really high performance. Truly appreciate that as this still exists, because what I saw that humor became so cheap and so flat was it's really tragic, because I
yeah.
think you should always bring hope, should bring really joy, and humor can be
Mhm.
definitely very intelligent and deep. It can be very deep, and this is what I really appreciate your movie.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I mean, and in the way too that like you can't have comedy without drama. And so the movie
So good.
has both, and the best comedies are also dramatic, and the best dramas, I think, have comedy in them because without that spectrum, there's nothing relative. It all just weights onto one side, and then the it's so narrow, like you said. So I think you're right. I mean, I tried to approach the movie much more like life. Life has comedy, it has drama, all in the same 5 minutes you can be crying and laughing. And so I,
Or both at the same time. This
yeah,
is
we're both exactly,
pain
exactly.
and joy at the same time. You did just, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
it's more real, right? Yeah.
this is actually something also what I think it's the narrative maybe of the movie, that you can have both at the same time. I mean, it was, I mean, when this car crashed, you just feel in a way excitement, but also very distant, and it
Yeah.
is actually many feelings at the same time where it was challenging.
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, I think, you're speaking to sort of the first scene of the movie, and it's not a spoiler to give anything away because,
It was
within
so
the first minute of the movie, this car, falls from the sky and lands in the middle of, the suburbs. And in a way, it sort of sets up this like unreliability of what's happening, right? Where it's like immediately right off the bat, we're sucked into a world that kind of anything can happen at any time. And there's this kind of mystery about it in some way. So we're both trying to piece something together, but also like emotionally rooted in this character who's kind of like wondering what's happening to him, right? So I think, yeah, I think as long as we brought all that stuff back around to some sort of emotional core, it seemed to work. Whereas if we tried to be too plotty about it and get too like, A, B, C, D, then it fell apart. But we really had to just stick with like what are the character's emotions here? Like what do we really need to see within this character in this moment? And I think that was what really kind of rooted the piece in a big way. So
What I found very beautiful about the movie was it was so rich. And also that you that's a lot of personal things. I mean, started with the Game Boy. I found that
yeah.
just so cool. I just, yeah, I just could not believe it. So that was really so. At what time is it you? Where can I? And this is very fascinating. When you watch a movie, you also want to organize everything in your
Yeah.
mind. And I was so
Yeah.
confused. I mean, I
Yeah.
saw that detail, and it was kind of okay, wait, I have to do some more research. So I was totally confused, but in a nice way, in a very excited, or in a way that is motivating. And
Mm.
also this was so beautiful, would open your eyes. And I think for me was the movie also, so we see the things every day, but then there is a moment we can see things differently.
Mm.
So, and
Yeah.
but how do you observe your daily life, which sometimes is so,
Yeah. I
this
mean,
movie is your great movie, so that.
it's a good question because like I think I think we all have our own really specific ways of seeing the world, and the movie itself is definitely about that subjective viewpoint, right? So it is, I'm trying to speak very cryptically because it is about, you don't want to give away the ending per se or give away what's going on. But, it is about that, like seeing the world from one specific point of view. And validating that point of view, no matter where it's coming from or where that person's mind actually is. So, for me, sure, like I see my world in a very specific way. I think a lot of that is kind of shown in the movie, and
Mm.
I think very maybe like fantastically and kind of in a surreal way. And I think some of that comes from my fine arts and like being very observant about what's going on around me. But also like I think, you know, I think that's only one way of seeing things. I don't think it's the only valid way of living a life. I truly don't. And so, you know, I think the movie itself dives into that a little bit and like validates the different ways with which we see the world. And this character, we're following this character, and you know, this set of characters who see the world in a very specific way for a very specific reason that we come to find out later. And I think, you know, validating that that doesn't negate any of those hopes and dreams that they're having. It is, it's all real in the mind of the person who's having those thoughts. So, yeah, if that answers, it's a very roundabout way of
Great
answering.
answer. I'm still processing it. Yeah. It was what I found. Yeah, I think it also goes into that there was such a childlike faith, and it
Yeah.
was, very dreamy. And so it had really, for me, it really gave me that feeling of American movies when I was a child and watching an American movie. And I
Sure.
haven't seen that in a long time. And it was very nostalgic for me
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to watch it and said, oh, this is, I had a moment when, his daughter, when she met this new guy and they were walking, she was walking on that little wall. And that gave me that summery, fresh feeling of being a child and so worried, not worried about the world. And
Mhm.
that was such a beautiful moment where I could remember, oh yeah, there are not a lot of movies actually like that because it is so tragic. I mean, yeah, drama,
Yeah.
but we have a lot of drama in the world. We need some fun, we need some humor and comedy, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
And where are this light movies? And that has such a, and yeah, it was very light to watch and very
Yeah.
childlike. So what is about this? I mean, what I can see from America, I mean, some stuff is going on that is very tragic and very
Mhm.
sad. American dream. Where is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I do think the movie, you know, because it does also follow these three different generations of like a whole, there's this whole kind of family, right? And so you're seeing the way in which like a character develops like in high school. Like it's a sort of a, I always like to say it's a coming of age, a midlife crisis, and a looming death story all at once. Um, and I think in that way it is sort of holistic. And so it does look at that kind of like suburban American life from a lot of different points of view, right? And the child, you know, the kids who are in high school, like that point of view, it is very innocent. They're really trying to figure themselves out. I mean, and a lot of that story is me, like that one mostly, like because I'm also kind of I'm sort of between the coming of age and the midlife crisis, I think. So I think I can relate to that, like that freedom of being a kid and like not knowing about the world, but sort of being excited about it.
Yeah.
And also like seeing though, like this thing coming, which is like getting older and like seeing that like, you know, like even questioning myself, like, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right career? Have I chosen the right path? Like all of this
Yeah.
stuff is
Yeah.
like very neurotic maybe and like very like it swims around in my brain like again and again and again, and I think that's leading to like this midlife crisis. And so you know I like as far as the like the this American dream thing, like I think maybe the reason why it's nostalgic too is like we are sort of seeing it from these different points of view, and it isn't just um you know, we're also kind of exploring that world and like seeing the school and the house and the yard and the, you know, the cul-de-sac that they live in, like the court and all of that stuff, I think really adds to that. You know, like it is certainly inspired by a lot of the movies from like the late 90s and early 2000s that like you look at like American Beauty or Donnie Darko, like some of these suburban 90s-ish movies, it's really kind of in that world, I think.
It's yeah, it's such an emotional movie in every way actually, and it's very triggering in a good
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. It's triggering for me, and I've seen it 1,000 times. So,
So, um, yeah, let's go back to the question, I mean, America was a Christian country, it was very, in God we trust and everything. And
mhm.
so, of course, also in the movie, there's a lot of the universe and you and me, myself, and I. And of course, I can relate so much more knowing all that. But where is that faithful America? And
Yeah,
because for me it's in one way, it's the movie was a little bit, yeah, as you say, holistic, maybe a little bit new agey, some
mm,
points, but where, because the movie was for me so American. So because in, I've seen with Tom Cruise, Born on the 4th of July,
yeah,
and God is so relevant. He was
mhm.
praying for the scene where he was praying, or they
Right.
were praying on the table. And I mean, I'm a Christian, but for me, it was so crazy to see that today.
Yeah,
And yeah, a really fantastic movie. I have that a
yeah,
long time, but never seen it, and it's highly recommend.
yeah.
And so where is that American dream connected to In God We Trust, is faith?
Yeah, yeah. I think Faith has a lot, like the movie itself, it's interesting because it is so rooted in science. And I think
Hmm.
a lot of people put science against like faith and
Yeah,
spirituality, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I don't think that line needs to exist. I think it's much blurrier than that because
yeah.
there is so much um, like exploration both in science but also in spirituality. And in this movie,
It goes hand in
know,
hand in a
it goes
way.
hand in hand in a lot of
Yeah,
ways. And I think in this movie, you have some characters who are fighting those two things in themselves, and you have some characters who are much more accepting of all of the different ways with which spirituality plays into the mind and the universe and the sciences, right? Because you have this character, like, the lead character has a children's science TV show, right? He's Bill Nye the Science Guy, or, one of those kind of characters. And, but he's presenting the world in a very hopeful way, right?
yeah.
And not try and trying to be kind of inclusive about the way in which we think about the world. But then you have his sort of, nemesis, or that he calls it, sort of that moves in across the street from him, who is actually played by the same actor who kind of is his foil throughout the movie, that has a very different thought about the way in which faith and spirituality should play into the sciences. Like there should be a very clear line and it should be very rigid. And so that battle, yeah, I mean, I think I felt that too, like growing up in the suburbs and having that sort of like very religious surroundings in that world. But then having my own thoughts and wondering if that's okay, that like, oh, I'm questioning things, or that, some of the things I'm learning are sort of running against that. And I hope the film, does offer that sense of hope and inclusion, maybe that often doesn't kind of come around.
Yeah, it was very beautifully shown in the scenes. You say this fight, with the
Yeah,
heart, with the mind, with the society, um science, with faith, and this is,
yeah,
I think that's a very good blueprint also with society. I mean, this is what I loved. It was really childlike, faithfully
yeah.
dream. And this is something that brings hope to the people. And this is something we need more of, movies like that. And
Oh,
definitely,
well, thanks. That's very
yeah,
sweet.
no, that's really, I'm very honest. I'm not yeah. No, I'm very transparent with that, and
Mhm.
it really could give me that the childlike, careless feeling in that scene, and I'm very thankful for that. And
Yeah.
so maybe what do you want to tell the audience about that sentence? Open your eyes. With that, what you want to give the audience with that sentence?
Well, that's so interesting because the movie opens with that line and it ends with that line. And the movie itself, like at the very end of the credits, like you see that the movie is dedicated to my grandfather,
Mhm.
passed away in 2018. And so I had started writing the script in 2015 and we shot the movie in 2020, right? So there's that kind of thing in my life that was happening around that time. And my grandfather had Alzheimer's in his later years
Okay.
and sort of witnessing things from that point of view, from his point of view in some regard, inspired the movie. And so I think like there is what I like about this book ending the movie with Open Your Eyes is sort of this in a way like offering the audience a way to realize that that a life is the same way, right? We kind of open our eyes at the beginning of a life, and we kind of at the end we kind of transition into some other whatever. We don't know what that is, right? At the end of our lives. It could be, again, we were talking about faith, like it can be some sort of faith related ending or some sort of scientific based ending, but it's sort of a new beginning in its own regard. And so, kind of offering the audience a way out of the movie by opening their eyes as well, into the world that they're about to exit the theater and be a part of, and sort of trying to see their world from their, like, recognize that they're seeing their world from a very specific point of view, and that point of view is okay, and offering some glimpse of hope in that regard. So that's what the idea around that was, in some metaphysical way, I suppose.
Yeah, it's that's very beautifully said. It's really a rich movie in every way. And um so there were also some family members involved in the whole process, or was it
Yeah,
more?
I mean, definitely. My mom is so great. She read a bunch of the drafts of the screenplay and, gave me thoughts and stuff. And, it's interesting, like they're always a part of the movie, and my family too, like my friends, I had some amazing like seven of my friends from my high school that we all used to like make movies together in high school and like do, we had our own little public access TV show. We would seven of those friends all worked on this movie, including two of them who were my producers. So like I've been friends with them since high school. So we all like we knew that world that we were creating because that was our little neighborhood that we grew up in. So yeah, my friends and family, I owe a lot to, I think, with this film in every way. For sure, that's right.
So interesting. This all behind the scenes makes this really so cool. I mean,
Yeah,
the audience just say, the finished movie and everything, but what's everything behind? This is so much story, and this is
yeah,
so lovely. So were
yeah.
there, yeah, maybe you can share some more what was very precious during the shooting, or what was challenging, or yeah.
Sure, sure. Yeah, we shot. So it's interesting because the movie is set in Ohio, the state of Ohio, which is where I'm from, which is sort of in the very middle of America. And but we shot the movie in New York, in upstate New York. So outside of New York City by about 2 hours north. And there were, some challenges because it was like we were heading towards winter and it was getting very cold. I mean, there were obviously some like logistical challenges in that way. But I think a lot of the challenges were very fun because the biggest challenge was really how do we make this movie the tone of it? Like, what is the tone, and how do we make this world that exists, this kind of very subjective, surreal world, how do we make it feel grounded? And
Yeah.
my production designer Molly Wortel was incredible. My cinematographer Ed Wu, like there was a lot of collaboration with the different departments to try to really make this very specific vision come to life. And I think like, yeah, I certainly owe a lot to them, but I think it was challenging, but I think it was a like I think that's why my crew really enjoyed making the movie was because it was kind of different, right? Like you're saying, like, oh, I don't see movies like this very much. Like it just had its own quality to it. And I think that's what they really latched on to.
Yeah, very cool, very interesting. So,
Yeah.
what has been totally, a scene maybe that totally changed that you planned, and it's in the end of the day is totally different.
Geez. I'd say like it's interesting. A lot of the stuff at the school changed because we shot during COVID, right? So we shot October 2020. Um,
Okay.
and so it was very like restricted. Like we had, we did tests like every day and we all wore masks and it was very rigid in that way. But I think it was tough to be subtle with my direction that I like to be with my actors and stuff like that. But like it brought us together in some way too, because we all had we all had one hotel that we all stayed in. We basically rented out this entire hotel and like kind of quarantined in it for the 6 weeks that we were shooting the movie.
So
And
good.
we like lived together. We made the ballroom at the hotel we made into like a little bar pub kind of area, and so we like just hung out there every night basically with each other, and so everybody really got to know each other like very well, and it became like this really good community. And I think without that was because of COVID, that we all had to really be like so quarantined
Really
together.
served you in the end of the day.
In some way it really was the best part about it because it
So
made
good.
it so much more of a team effort.
So beautiful. Hey, thank you
Yeah.
so much for this amazing, fun interview. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they already texted me. We have so it's
Sure.
it was really yeah, it was really fantastic. Know all this stuff behind, and now I see the movie, have the chance and the privilege to see the movie even in a more deeper and different way. And so
Cool. Well, that's great, Desiree. Well, thank you. It's been very nice speaking with you as well. You have very good questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
thank you so much. I hope it really could serve you. And but you're
Thanks.
not on Instagram. Where can people find you?
I don't know. I'm not really on social media. I guess they just have to Google me or whatever every once in a while. But yeah, maybe I'll end up back on Instagram, but I was just finding myself lost in it too much. So, you
Yeah,
know.
that's very good. That's
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
super
Thanks
feeling.
very much. Time is running out.